much you know about Esther. We're going to start reading in just a minute, but let me bring you up to speed in the story. Esther was an orphan girl. She was raised by her uncle Mordecai. Mordecai lived about 80 years in Babylon. By the way, a number of Jews had stayed behind, even though they had been given their freedom to return to Jerusalem. Remember Ezra and Nehemiah? Those are the two we looked at the last couple of weeks. Not all the Jews had gone back to Jerusalem, to Israel. Many had stayed in Persia, in Babylon, and that was the case with Esther and Mordecai and a lot of other Jews. And so she's living at the time. There's a king named King Xerxes, and he's the grandson of King Cyrus, who we looked at the last couple of weeks. And King Xerxes, he holds a feast. It's a 180-day feast. And food is on the house, drinks, alcohol is on the house. It's a bender of benders that they're on, okay? And everyone's invited. At the end, at 180 days, King Xerxes, he calls for Queen Vashti, his queen, to come out and to parade in front of his drunk guests. Well, she refuses. She said, they've been drinking for months. I'm not coming out there just for all these men to oogle at me. I'm not coming. She refuses. He loses his temper. He says, you're no longer my queen, bans her from the palace. But not only that, his guests start to say to him, hey, if she doesn't listen to you, when we go home, our wives aren't going to listen to us. So you have to do something. I'm not making this up. This is in Esther. You have to do something about it. And so he passes a decree that all Persian men are in charge of their homes, and their wives must do whatever they want. This is all in Esther. It's just this is where the oppression of women, you want to put your finger on it, it starts right there. And it does. And so he needs a new queen because he's fired Queen Vashti. And so he holds a Persian Miss Persia beauty contest, all right? And they start looking for the most beautiful woman in Persia. And Esther wins. You know, of all the eligible women, Esther is chosen as the most beautiful woman in Persia. And so she moves into the palace. She becomes his queen. Chapter 3 in Esther, we're introduced to the villain. The villain's name is Haman. Haman was a Canaanite who had risen in power and rank, and he became second only to the king. And so King Xerxes puts out an edict that whenever Haman walks down the street, everybody has to bow down to him. Well, he walks by Uncle Mordecai, Esther's uncle, and Uncle Mordecai says, I bow only to God. I'm not bowing to this clown. You know, he said, this guy is not where I know his character. I'm not. He refuses. So Haman is furious, and Haman goes to the King Xerxes, and he deceives him into signing a decree that all Jewish people will be executed, and they set a date. It will be genocide in Persia. And so that's at this point, this is when Mordecai goes to Esther, who's the queen, and says, man, you've got to convince the king to not execute everyone here. And so that brings us, I want to start in Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Esther 4:14 is one of the most powerful lines in the entire Bible. And it's this simple line that's on the screen. Perhaps, this is Mordecai says to her, perhaps you were born for such a time as this. It's such a powerful time. If you've ever wondered, why does God have me here? What does God want to do with my life? Then you need to remember this line from Esther chapter 4. Perhaps you were born for such a moment as this. So this is what Mordecai is saying to Esther. This is your divine moment. This is your moment to shine. And the question is, will she seize her divine moment? Will she act, or will she shy away? Will she be brave, or will she hide in fear? Will she speak up, or will she be silent? And so this morning, I want to put this same line in front of you. I'm going to give this same challenge to you, because you also will this year, maybe this month, maybe this week, maybe right now, you're facing an opportunity or a challenge, and God has put it in front of you. You have a big life-altering moment, and I just want to say to you, perhaps you were made for such a moment as this. Perhaps, maybe this is your moment. You think it's not, but maybe it is. And so the challenge that we want to wrestle with today is, will you seize your divine moment, to use Erwin McManus's phrase. Will you seize your divine moment? So what is a divine moment? I've got a couple of definitions that I've written. I'm trying. This is way too much to remember. So if you want to take it home with you, you better pull out your phone and take a picture. But divine moments, and this is my thoughts on the whole concept, are those points in your life when everything you are and everything you've experienced all converge and wake you up to the realization that things cannot remain the way they are, and you cannot remain where you are, and you must act. And God has prepared you your entire life for this thing, for this moment. This is what you were made for. That's a Josh Havens line, by the way. I'm going to break it down here in this next slide. A divine moment is when God shows you a need that taps into all your experiences and all your passions. And then when you act, you come alive. And it puts you at your best. And God uses you to make a difference in this world. So that's what we're talking about today. When I keep using this phrase, a divine moment, and to grab onto it, that's what it is. So I wonder today, have you had a moment like that? A moment when you realized, there's more. You realize I've been living a limited life. God has so much more. Maybe you realize I need to act. This is Esther's moment to act. I need to act, not somebody else. And you realize this is what I was made for. This is what God put me here to do. And when you do it, you come alive, you thrive, you're fulfilled. So today I want to look at divine moments of action, moments when you need to act. Maybe God is calling you to do something good or new or bold or to speak up. These are divining moments. They're critical moments. I want to ask you this question. Has it ever been, and we're going to put this on the screen, has it ever been in your power to do something good, but you chose instead to do nothing? Wow. I've had those moments. And you know what? I fill with this feeling of regret that won't go away. So I try not to miss them again. Let me read this again. Has it ever been in your power to do something good, but you chose instead to do nothing? You missed a divine moment. Has God ever given you an opportunity to lead and you shied away? Or to be brave or bold, and you chose not to do it, and you did nothing. As I was preparing this last week, I was trying to think about my first opportunity to lead. I'm going to be honest with you, and I missed it. I was 11 years old. Here's what happened is, most of you know that my family, we grew up in the bush in Africa, and there was a mission school in the jungle that my mother taught at on our mission station deep in the Sino rainforest. And she found out that one of the teachers at this school had been a scoutmaster. And so she tells him, hey, you need to start a Cub Scout troop for all the kids on the camp, all the kids that want to be in it. And so she has a tailor in the village sew us scout uniforms. They never fit right. So we have these homemade looking scout uniforms. And she bought us some kind of neckerchief to put around our neck. And then our scoutmaster, he teaches us how to drill and how to march and how to light fires and things like that. All the boys knew how to light fires already. But anyway, he teaches us how to march. And then they tell us that there's Liberia's Independence Day coming, and we were going to march in the county parade. Liberia doesn't have states. They have 9 counties, and we were in Sino County. So we were going to go to the big city. It had one cement road in it, okay? And we're going to go there, and we're going to march down that road with all the schools and the bands, and everybody was coming to the county seat. It was called Greenville, named after Greenville, South Carolina. And so the scoutmaster said, Palmer, they had named me the troop leader. He said, you're going to march in front, and your main job, in fact, my only job was, he said, all the dignitaries will be sitting on one next to the road. You're going to come down the road. There's going to be a line in the road. And they said, when you see that line, you have to hit it with your left foot and turn and say, eyes right, all right? So I got the whole troop behind me, and everybody on my cue says, eyes right. Some of you done this before in the military. This was my one moment. So I practiced for a month. I'm going down the hallway at home doing eyes right. I could hit a line with my left foot anywhere in town, all right, anywhere I was practicing every moment I was walking to time it so my left hit right, and I would give this sharp eyes right. And the kids told me, all my friends said, if you hit the line with your left foot and you say eyes right, the whole crowd goes crazy and cheers. If you miss it, they're going to boo you. So I didn't want that to happen. So the day comes. I've got the truth. There's got to be hundreds, 500 people in this parade, hundreds lining the streets, and I'm coming down, and I'm walking, and I'm going, and I've got the troop behind me, and then I go past the line. I didn't know I passed the line. The scoutmaster's yelling, you missed the line. You didn't say eyes right. And I said, what line? And the kids behind me are all yelling at me. The crowd is booing me. And my moment, I had missed it. And he said, the line, I turn around, the line, I'm looking for something big, red, white, striped. It was the crack in the cement, the joint I missed the joint in the concrete. Then my little sister, she's 5, she comes along, she salutes with her left hand, and the crowd goes nuts. She wasn't supposed to do that. But I missed it. And now that wasn't a divine opportunity. That was just an opportunity. But don't we have moments to shine, moments when God wants to use your life, and sometimes we miss it. That's the story of Esther. So let's continue the story here. Mordecai, remember he said to her, perhaps you were made for a moment such as this. This is Esther's divine moment. So let's start reading in Esther chapter 4, verse 15. Grab your Bibles or your app. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast and pray. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And she says, if I die, I die. All right, so maybe what you don't know in this story is that if she goes before the king, the law of the land was if the king didn't want to see you, if he didn't want you in his presence, he would just say, off with your head. Just that was it. Just off. And so she's saying, I will risk execution. And so this morning, I want to talk about how we seize our divine moment. So how do we seize our divine moment? It starts with this, by taking courage, by being brave. So Esther takes courage. She says, if I die, I die. And she's willing to risk execution. Divine moments, for some reason, they always seem to come with a risk, don't they? They always require that we be brave. In Esther chapter 4, verse 16, she says, if I die, I die. In other words, bring it on. Let's roll. I love the fearlessness that we see in Esther. You talk about a brave, bold, courageous woman, that's Esther. I think when you read the book of Esther, and this is so important, I want to pause here because I want to say, please don't miss this. Esther is one of the Bible's many but great reminders that the Bible lifts up and empowers women. I think so many times we miss that. And so at the Grove, we want to be a church, a place that lifts up and empowers women. Esther gives us an example of the many women in the Bible who are empowered and they become strong leaders. I'll just remind you of a few. Huldah in the Old Testament, this is in 2 Chronicles, says that we read she's the leader of the prophets. You have Deborah, we read, was a judge, which means she led all of Israel. You have Jael. I don't know if you've read of Jael. Jael is in the book of Judges in chapter 4. Jael, during a battle, she finds the enemy commander hiding in a tent, but he's fallen asleep. What does she do? She grabs a tent stake and a hammer, and she drives it through his head. Okay, I know it's a little grisly, but she's a strong, no-nonsense woman. I want Jael on my side. Lydia, Lydia, some call her the mother of Christianity because she was a businesswoman who funded Paul's missionary journey. She was also a church planter. You've got Phoebe was a deacon. You have Junia was an apostle. And then, of course, we have Esther. So there are so many strong women leaders in the Bible. I think sometimes we can miss it. I think sometimes preachers only paint pictures of strong men in the Bible. I want to remind you today that the Bible is filled with images and reminders and pictures of strong women. That's why I say at the Grove, we want to be a place that lifts up and empowers women. My experience is over my life, growing up in church, being a pastor for over 30 years. I think there are too many churches, I'm going to be blunt and honest with you, churches and pastors and even Christian colleges that push women down when the Bible is lifting them up. About 10 years ago, I started a vlog. Remember when vlogs were a thing? Anybody a vlogger here? All right. It kind of didn't go anywhere, but anyway, I thought, hey, I'll jump on and be a vlogger. And so I gave it a shot, and my vlogs are still on my YouTube channel. But anyway, and so I started a vlog about the things that I thought churches and Christians should do that churches and Christians were not doing. This led to my book, by the way, Barefoot Tribe, if you want more on that. And so one of the things I did a series on was empowering women. And I posted my first video on it, and I got some negative feedback, but a lot of positive feedback. And then that Sunday, we ended up being at Payway. Now I'm at Payway every Sunday, just about after church. But anyway, so I'm at Payway, and there's a family there from the Grove. We greeted them, said hi, chatted a bit, and then we got our meal, we're eating, but they're leaving now. And she stopped at our table, and she said, I just want to say thank you for what you posted this week on your blog about empowering women, that God in Scripture empowers women. And then she started to tear up. So I got up to talk to her and her husband. I said, why are you crying? She said, because I've always wanted to be in ministry. In fact, I've always wanted to be a pastor. And I said, well, you can. And she says, no, it's too late. And I was like, and as they're leaving, I'm trying to say, no, it's not too late. But that's how she ends the conversation, and she leaves. And I want to say to all the women in the room here today and who are watching online, it's not too late. God and the Bible keep saying that you are strong and brave and you are great leaders, and we need to celebrate that as a church. We need to celebrate as followers of Jesus Christ. All right, so how do we seize our divine moment? First, I said, be brave, all right, as we see in Esther. The second one is this: take action. If you are going to grab onto your divine moment, you've got to do something. You can't just talk about it. And so let's pick up here in Esther chapter 5, verse 1. On the third day of the fast, remember, Esther had asked everyone, all the Jewish people, to fast and pray. Esther put on her royal robes, and she entered the court of the palace just across from the king's hall. And the king was sitting on his royal throne, facing the entrance. When he saw King Esther standing there in the inner court. Now remember, at this point, he can say, come in, or he can say, off with her head. Those were the two things. All right, it could go really bad. At this point, he welcomed her and held out the golden scepter. She touched the end of it. Verse 3, then the king asked her, what do you want, Queen Esther? What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it's half the kingdom. All right? Can I just say this? Best case scenario right here. All right, it's gone as well as it can at this point, because it could have gone really bad. So I think a key to seizing your divine moment is you have to take action. What does Esther do? She steps into the throne room. She literally walks in, and her action is to go in. And I don't know what action is needed by you. Maybe God has an opportunity in front of you, a divine moment in front of you. Well, you've got to act on it. You've got to do something. You've got incorporate, schedule the meeting, build your team. I said, schedule the meeting. A funny thing, in August, early August, a young man from the Grove found me after church, and he has tons of baseball experience and coaching experience. He came up to me, he said, hey, could I meet with you? He asked for a meeting. He said, I would like to offer to start a baseball team at Justice College. And I said to him, I said, hey, I love the idea, but I'm slammed this month. My son's getting married. College is starting. I've got travel planned. I said, could you see me in October? Okay, I don't know why. I've never put anyone off 2 months, but I thought if we're going to act on something, I need more time than I have right now. Well, I totally forgot about that conversation. October 1st, he's in my office, all right? All right, he showed up for the meeting. He's not kidding around. And after I met with him and I had our dean meet in the meeting with him, I think we're gonna have a baseball program at Justice College. All right, thank you. Baseball fan here, Dodgers, all right. I know. And that's the thing. If he doesn't show up, I don't know. We might wait another 1 or 2 years. Right now, I think, now we need fast pitch softball. So if you know fast pitch softball, you find me after church. Because if we're going to do one, we're going to do both. So, but I don't know what it is for you. Make the move, get on the plane, leave the past behind. Do something good for a neighbor or in your neighborhood. Meet a need. Stop a wrong. Do you know what Esther's action is she stops an injustice. You want to talk about an injustice? Is Haman wanting to execute tens of thousands of Jewish people? And so I just want to remind you here when I say take action, that God gives all of us a choice. You live life in one of two ways. You either live visible. We see you doing the things that God calls you to, seizing those divine moments, or you live invisible. It's very possible to slide through life invisible, and no one sees what God can do in your life. So the question is, do you have an opportunity in front of you? Is there a need that God is showing you that you can meet, you can? Or do you have a chance to make a difference in this world? Maybe like with Esther, he wants you to stop an injustice. I think too often we fail to act. And I'm here to remind you today that sometimes you must act to stop the worst things from happening. And then sometimes you must act in order for the best things to happen. Some of the best things in your entire life experience will only happen when you take action, when you seize your divine moment. When I say that, I think of Dan and Corey Lenz. About 2 weeks ago, I was at a wedding in Charlotte, and Dan Lenz's niece was getting married, and his brother's a good friend of mine. Dan is the vice president now of African Bible colleges. Dan and his wife, Corey, I've known since she was in high school and he was in college, and when they got married. And he also led our academy in Liberia, in Malawi. But Dan, while I was at the wedding with him, he told me the story of their twins. They have 2 twins, a boy and a girl. They're 3 years old. And I didn't know the whole story. You see, Dan and Corey were in their mid-40s, and they felt like God wanted them to foster kids. They saw the need in their community in Charlotte, and so they signed up. They went through training for months. He said, finally, we were licensed to be foster parents. He said literally, I think he said 1 hour after we were licensed, we got a notification that there were twins that needed to be taken in. They were just 3 months old. And so they took in these twins, a boy and a girl at 3 months old. They only had them for 3 or 4 months, and they went back to the parents. 30 days later, the parents came to them and said, we aren't doing a good job with them. You'll be better parents. We know that. We saw what you've done to them. Would you adopt them? And so Dan and Corey, somewhere in their 40s, I've got a picture here, have 3-year-old twins. Do you see what I'm saying? You can miss that divine opportunity. You can say, I'm too old, I'm too busy, I've had enough kids, I don't want to change diapers anymore. Or if the best things in life are going to happen, you have to seize your divine moment and take action. All right, here's the next challenge here, and this is it. If you're going to seize your divine moment, you are going to have to speak up. There's this great line here in chapter 4, verse 14. Amazing line. This is what Mordecai says to Esther when he tells her about the Jews about to be annihilated. He said, if you remain silent, I just want to stop there. If you remain silent, how many times have you chosen to be silent instead of speaking up? It's a hard thing to speak up when you know you have to. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you, your father's family, will perish, all right? It's going to go really bad. This is your moment to speak up. Let's continue the story here. So Esther invites the king to a meal. And she says, can we invite Haman to this meal? And so Haman shows up. He feels like a big shot, we read, because he's eating with the king and the queen. And then after dinner, Haman is leaving the palace and he sees Mordecai, Uncle Mordecai. Remember what I said about Uncle Mordecai? Uncle Mordecai refuses to bow down to Haman. So he's leaving the palace after this dinner that Esther hosts. And he when he sees Mordecai not bowing, he loses his mind. And he tells his people, erect a stake. Some of your Bibles say gallows, but the more I read on it, it's a stake, a really sharp stake. And he said, put it in the middle of the city, and we're going to impale Mordecai on it tomorrow. That's his plan. Like a grisly plan, again. And so the next day, Haman shows up at the palace. I'm sorry, let me back up. That same night, after he says, put a stake in the ground for Mordecai, that same night, we read that King Xerxes can't fall asleep. And so he calls in one of his staff and says, could you read me from the royal history books? And this is just God. God is always, as Josh has just seen, in the story. God is always in the story. So as they open the history books and he starts to read this section about how Mordecai had stopped a coup d'etat and saved the king's life. And King Xerxes says, man, and this is in the middle of the night now. He says, man, this guy saved my life. We've never honored him. He says, I need to honor him. So the next morning, Haman shows up to see King Xerxes. And Haman is going to ask him, can I impale this guy in the stake I have outside here? And when he walks into the palace, King Xerxes asked Haman a question. He says, Haman, he said, what would you do to honor a man who you really value? And Haman thinks that the king wants to honor him. So Haman says, I would put him on a stallion. I would put some royal purple robes on him. Then I would have someone lead the horse and yell, this is a great man who the king wants to honor. And the King Xerxes says, Haman, that's a brilliant idea. I want you to get a horse and some royal robes, and I want you to parade Mordecai around town and announce that he's a great man. All right. God is in the story, right? God is right there. And so it's a plot twist. You think the Bible writers don't know plot twists. God knows a plot twist. And so it turns. And so Haman is leading Mordecai through town, honoring him. And all because Esther is willing to speak up. Esther chapter 7, verse 2, after she finds her voice, let's pick up here. The king again, so finally she holds one final banquet, and the king asks again, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you, even if it's half the kingdom. Verse 3, then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life, save me. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request. And then she tells him about Haman's plan to execute the Jews. The king, King Xerxes, he's furious with Haman, and he has Haman impaled on his own stake. All right? Another plot twist. That's how this story ends. And so I want to end with this thought, and I hope this sits in your heart today, that trust God's plan. This is probably the most important lesson in the book of Esther, is that behind it all, under it all, is God's plan. Everything God turns around, as we sang earlier. It's a story of reversal and plot twist and turnaround. The lesson is that when we trust the providence of God, when we trust his plan, and that he's in control, that it changes everything. We can have an impact in this world. And so I want to ask you today, are you trusting the providence and purpose of God? Have you trusted that he's ultimately in control of it all? And so the challenge for you today is to be brave, take action. I don't know what opportunity, what divine moment God has for you. But if it's in front of you today, then take it. Maybe you are facing a Haman in your life. Maybe you feel attacked. Maybe you need courage to be brave. Maybe God has given you an opportunity. Maybe you can either take action or you can leave it. But I want to challenge you to trust God's plan. I want to challenge you more than that to seize your divine moment that God has given you.